What if I told you that parking lots could be a surprisingly good investment? That's right, parking lots, they seemingly look like cost centers. They look like something that you wouldn't think of when it comes to making money. However, they can generate a lot of income, and that's what we're going to talk about today as an alternative investment type to help you make money in 23. Now, the first thing I want to look at is how much of an untapped market is there, and why are we actually looking at this? So the first thing I want to look at is supply and demand. So first off, urban growth. Urban growth in the United States, if we look at the census data back in December of 2022, urban growth has continued to grow throughout the last 20 years. So if you look here this is from the Census Bureau, the nation's urban population increased by 6.4% between 2010 and 2020. And some of the largest metros in the country, as far as densely populated areas, are of over 200,000 people are LA, San Francisco, San Jose, New York, Hawaii. I mean, that's not really a surprise to many people. The states with the largest urban populations, California, Texas, Florida, those are obviously. But what was interesting as well is Texas also has the largest rural population, just given the size of the state. Number two is congestion. So if I go over to this PwC article, if we look here, actually let me go back. Existing parking spaces cannot meet current demand. Obviously we know that. I'd say COVID had a little bit to do with this in terms of drawing people away back home. So congestion did lighten up, but as we've seen post-COVID, things have started to heat up again. If I look at this PwC article from 2021, it looks like here capacity is consistently strained on America's roads. That congestion is a chronic problem throughout the country. In 2017, the average person spent 41 hours in congestion, an increase of 8% over 2010. Obviously, people need to park those cars. When they spend all that time on the road, they need a place to park it, and that's where you come in as an investor. So go back to number three, we have investment opportunities. So there is a high demand for parking spaces, although a lot of people don't think about it, to earn a steady income and achieve a high ROI. Now, if you think about that, you go to a parking lot, what do you see? You see some concrete, you see some stripes, maybe you see a parking lot attendant. But if you start going around and you say you have 500 spaces and there's $20 a space, that's $10,000 that they're making maybe every day. Could be $30, could be $40, could be a monthly. Multiply the number of spots times the number of average payout per day. And again, those prices could fluctuate depending on the day and the time and depending on the event. So just be wary of that. Now, the different types here, there's outdoor lots, multi-level and covered lots, valet parking services, parking garages. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was younger, just starting out, when I started driving, I did valet park cars a lot. And not only did we charge the valet fee, sometimes there were parking fees on top of that. So the customer would come up, we'd take their keys, we'd go valet, they'd park there in the spot, and then they'd also end up tipping us, which turned out great for not only the owner of the lot, as well as the owner of the valet service, but as well as the customer. They got their car back in a very quick and timely manner. Then you have parking garages. And I would say parking garages are probably the most lucrative with the highest margin because, yeah, you have to build that or subcontract it out. But once you have that parking structure available, you're talking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 levels up, and you have, say, 50 spots or 100 spots on each floor. There's 5 floors, that's 500 spots. Really just depends on local zoning codes and how high you're able to build. Now, continuing on, some things you want to look at before you invest: location. So obviously you don't want to open a parking lot or invest in a parking lot that's in the middle of nowhere. Probably not smart. You're not going to have enough traffic to meet the needs of covering your float every month. Number two, costs. So you've got land acquisition, permits, construction, maintenance costs. And don't worry, I'm going to get into some ways for you to invest that don't have to do with upfront costs later on in the video, so stick around for that. You have competition. So you do have, when you're in those more urban, densely populated areas, you will have different competitors with different pricing strategies. Some may be cheaper during the week or on the weekends. Some may be cheaper during the week. Some may be cheaper if you're going to an event, and vice versa. And then being able to organize revenue, making sure that dollars are going here, flows are going out, etc. Now, pricing strategy and revenue management. So again, like I talked about, you have demand-based pricing. So that could be when the demand is high, you increase the profit or increase the amount you charge, and when demand is low, you can maximize that as well, by lowering your cost to at least get people in to absorb those spots. You can do flat rate pricing, so it's the same every day, or you can do seasonal pricing. Like I said, sporting events, concerts, those are big. Also, from an ATM perspective, I've seen ATM vendors raise their fees at a concert or a venue and then drop those fees back down when they move the ATM back into its original location. So there are legal and regulatory considerations. So you have local laws, you have liability concerns, you have insurance, and insurance is a big one. So when you own a parking lot and somebody gets hurt, there's a crash, there's a theft, there's a problem, A lot of times the people involved in that will come back to the parking lot owner or owners and ask for, hey, we need you to file a claim with your insurance. Are you able to help out with this, etc.? That's where you may have premiums and you may have liability concerns. So, you want to make sure you're protecting yourself if you do go the route of purchasing or building where you're part of the LLC, you're part of the company there. You want to make sure that you're taking all the steps necessary to protect yourself, as anyone should. Continuing on, some of the other case studies for successful parking lot investments, and I'm starting to see more of this, the green push. So, you look at installation of EVs, green parking facilities, implementation of automated parking systems. These are all really big things. So you look at sustainability, and if I go down here and I click on more, green parking facilities incorporate, rain gardens, solar panels, permeable pavement to reduce environmental impact. So if you have a parking lot and you have the top floor, you can put solar panels on it. That's one way of going about it. Number two, I do see a ton of parking lots today that are either being started or retrofitted with EV charging, typically at zero cost to the person charging. That can really help from a investment standpoint to not only boost the return on your investment when you sell it, but draw more people in as you've got to your parking lot for sporting events, games, whatever that may be. And then probably the biggest one is getting rid of that person or people there and going to a more automated parking system where you're able to get rid of that person, cut down on the human capital, cut down on the wages, and just go fully automated where you're getting a ticket, you're scanning a credit card, you're scanning an easy toll pass in your windshield, etc. Now, the big one that people ask, how do I invest in this? So there's a couple ways. Number one is the direct investment. So direct investment in a parking lot can provide steady cash flow, but it carries risks, like I said, maintenance, demand fluctuations, insurance, taxes, potential to be sued, all those things you need to worry about. You need to look at and make sure you're okay with dealing with if you want to go direct. Obviously, it's a big CapEx investment up front, but you own it, you set the pricing, you set the demand, etc. Number two is REITs, so real estate investment trusts that actually offer diversification, but they're managed. So this is less control, but less headache. Some of those include like Mobile Infrastructure, which is a parking REIT, Parking Sports America, PSA, and then parking.com. Those are privately held companies that you can invest in through third-party dealers in order to get some of that exposure. And then number three is crowdfunding. So crowdfunding platforms, like I've talked about before, like a Fundrise, not here in this case for parking lots, but third parties like municipal bond dealers. You got Vanguard, Raymond James, and then you do have bond mutual funds that invest in parking lots. So a couple of those, if I look over here, are one of those is iShares National Muni Bonds, MUB. They do the fund. If you look down here, they invest in component securities of underlying indexes and invest 90% of it in fixed income securities, blah, blah, blah. What does that mean? Well, basically, it's a bond fund, and some of the things they invest in are municipal bonds that actually hold parking lots inside of them. So if you're looking for exposure specifically to that, this is a place you can invest in. Over the long haul, it actually hasn't done that great. I mean, it's not fluctuated too much, but the max of the portfolio back in 2007, it opened at 101, and now it's at 106. So the yield that does pay a yield, it does pay a dividend. The expense ratio is extremely low, but you're not getting a lot of return, although you're not getting a lot of risk. Another one is this Vanguard fund, does pay a dividend. The max on this is you've actually lost money since the fund was initiated. But again, just like the last one, this is an index which captures municipal bonds from insurers that are primary, state, or local. And you're looking at ways to buy municipal bonds that get put in these ETFs. And then that gives you the ability to invest in it. So again, you're not having direct ownership. You're just buying in for a piece. They're crowdfunding a bunch of money from several different people together, and then you're able to absorb that cost. So, I don't have $1 million to go start a parking lot, but maybe I have 50,000 or 100,000, and from there I can pool up with 10 or 20 different people. And then it also reduces my risk, so I can invest in a lot of different parking lots across many different states. So if one goes out of business, I'm okay, versus putting all my money in one parking lot, which I've talked about before, diversification, and making sure you understand that. The last one I'll go over is the BlackRock National Municipal Fund. This is the same thing. This one has turned a little bit of a profit, not much of a dividend there, and then the yield, again, it does pay a dividend there. So again, these are more low risk, low reward type things, but if you are interested in investing, maybe it's something you add to, you swap out one of your bonds out of a 70-30 portfolio, are 60-40, and of that 40%, you put a bond fund in here. Again, very low expense ratio, not charging a lot, although you're not making a lot from a dividend perspective. All right, so we talked about all the different ways you can invest, talked about some of the risks. Let's finish it off here and let's talk about the conclusion. So parking lots can be stable and profitable long-term investment. Just be careful and take all the considerations in mind. Just make sure you do your research, you plan, you execute. And I think for most people, just like anything, you probably don't want to sink all your money into one asset. And what does that mean? It means that you want to make sure you're spreading it out. You want to make sure you're diversified. You want to make sure that you understand the risks before you get into it. You understand the traffic patterns, pricing structures, EBITDA models, all those things before you invest in it. And I would say for 99% of people that want exposure to this, do the crowdfunding side, do the REIT side, pool your money together, let somebody else manage it, let them take a little bit of a fee. Unless you can find that parking lot in your town, in your area, that is looking to sell, maybe the person that owns it is ready to retire, they don't want to manage it anymore, and they're ready to offload that asset. If it's something like that, I think that makes sense. But don't go out there. For most people, I would say don't go out there and put your life savings into a parking lot and go whole hog and risk bankruptcy or insolvency or something like that. So let me know down in the comments if you are investing in parking lots, if you've thought about investing in parking lots, if this is all new. Let me know. I'll link this down in the description below, this presentation as well as those funds I listed up there. And as always, don't forget to design your financial freedom. Take care. Bye-bye.